Hello all! Today's Scorcher Toys at Anymoon.com is pitting Bandai's August 2024 High Metal R release of Neki Basara's VF19 Kai Fire Valkyrie from Macross 7 against the original High Metal release from way back in January 2010. The High Metal R is an entirely new sculpt that retailed for 13,000 yen. It comes in this box with sweet art up front and a window in the back that lets you see it ships in Battroid. The original High Metal retailed for only 7,000 yen. It came in this box, which also has nice artwork and even included a flip-top lid that lets you see the toy packaged in fighter mode. In August 2010, Bandai also released an accessory kit for an additional 2,100 yen. The accessories were sold exclusively through the Tamashii website and were shipped in not quite retail packaging. To make this the most complete review possible, this video compares the more expensive and more complete High Metal R offering against the original High Metal with the sold separate accessory kit. We begin with the question of which toy comes with the better stuff, and we'll start with the pilot figure. The High Metal R pilot figure seen here is very nicely detailed for such a tiny little figure, and we will get to size and scale in just a little bit. We can take this pilot figure, we can put him into the cockpit, and then we have this separate canopy that we can put on like so. Now it is a very blue canopy, but that may be to your liking or not. Here is the original High Metal toy, and the pilot figure is inside the cockpit. It is glued in there, and the canopy is permanently shut. Both toys come with guns that are actually speaker pod launchers. This is the High Metal R speaker pod launcher. It has two gimmicks to it. The fin in the front can recess, and when you go from Battroid or Gerwalk, you can slide this back, the handle, and then it'll fit underneath the toy like so, and it'll pinch in with that little slot there in between the arms in fighter mode. Very cool. If you're using this in Battroid or Gerwalk, you are then going to put it into your fixed posed hand. It will just slide on there like so, and it's gonna be nice and sturdy in the hand. The original High Metal toy comes with this speaker pod launcher. There is no moving handle. There is no moving front fin. It is for Battroid in Gerwalk mode only, except for a gun attachment piece that we will look at in a bit. And it does come with a fixed posed hand similarly, not quite as sturdy a grip, but it does work out just fine. Both toys include a battle mask. To use the battle mask on the High Metal R, I'm going to bring that head fin just back a little bit and then lift up on this front panel here and then just pull the face off, leaving that cavity like so. Here is the optional battle mask. It's just going to plug in where the old face used to be, and then we can put our little top of the head back on again and bring that head laser flat, and there you go, a little less clownish looking face for you. The process and effect are very similar on the original High Metal toy. I'm gonna go ahead and remove that whole top part. You can see the head came off just willy-nilly, so maybe doesn't attach quite as firmly, but here is the battle mask, just a couple of pegs into a couple of slots, press inward, and then replace that top of the head. And there you go. The High Metal R toy comes with these hands that can go through full transformation already installed. And I will say that I find these hands, even though they're small compared to the others, to be about appropriately sized. Maybe they're just a little bit on the small side. But then we got a bunch of fixed posed hands with the High Metal R, starting with these fists, which you could see are absolutely massive in comparison to those pre-installed hands. And what that ends up doing is making the hands look too big and making the whole arms, which already have a simian style length to them, just look even more oversized. So here is a sort of open pose hand. And if I take this ball joint hand off and put this one on, and then we look at the arm size from one to the other, look how big a discrepancy that giant hand causes. We also get this kind of a gripping hand and of course a gun holding hand as well to round everything out. But I did find them, even though it's nice to have so many different options, to be a little large looking compared to the original hands, especially again with that length of the arm and how it exacerbates that issue. In comparison, the original High Metal toy did not have any pre-installed hands, just a cover, and then it came with these open grip hands, which just kind of made it look like Basara didn't know what he wanted to do. And then the accessory kit finally gave us fists. Of course, there's also a gun holding hand as well. The High Metal R includes a Tamashii Stage Act display stand in a nice translucent red with a gold embellishment on it. All very nice and attractive. If you're not familiar with these display stands, you do have the ability to rotate the arm at the base. Nice ratcheted joint for height adjustment. And then we have a pivot at the top. And if you wanted to make this toy bank, you would bring the arm over to the side and then you could pivot it like this. And it's just a round peg at the top so you can rotate the toy around there. The High Metal, the original toy, if you got the accessory kit, comes with this display stand. Now there's a little oddness. The arm attaches, it's got these pegs on the bottom around the circular peg, and then you have the slots around that center hole, which means it can only go in at 90-degree angles. So you can't put your toy on there and then rotate it around, which is oddly inhibiting. Similar to the Stage Act, we have a pivot point at the bottom, which is nicely ratcheting. We also have a pivot point at the top, so far very similar. But then this display stand has the ability to pivot left and right. Now there is no way to increase the tension of that joint, which is a little bit short-sighted because you might get your toy on there and then the weight makes it want to droop further to one side. But if all we're doing is getting our toy up here and doing a banking pose, a little bit easier to do with this display stand, which obviously has a much busier base to it. Now you may also notice that there is a slot in the back that can receive the gun, and the grip just goes into that slot. And you might be curious why we would do that, but I'll show you that in just a moment. One other thing to point out, this is a hexagonal slot at the top. So again, if we put the toy on here, similar to the base, we can't just rotate that toy around. We have to pull it out and then change it to one of those 6 positions. Just needlessly complicated in comparison to the High Metal R's more basic display stand. Another cool aspect of the original High Metal display stand is that it has 3 slots on either side and 1 in the back to accommodate this included Tamashii Stage Act style arm, which can attach to any Tamashii Stage Act display stand adapter like the ones that come with all the other High Metal R's. Now, it was originally intended to help with displaying the sold separately sound booster, but the fact that it can attach to any High Metal R toy makes it so you can have lots of fun with different combined displays. This is the display stand adapter for the High Metal R in fighter mode. You can't even see it, it's invisible. And it goes right in just behind the knees like so, just tabs in, presses in, you heard it kind of click into place. So strong I could flip the toy upside down. Pegs in very simply. We can now rotate the toy around. Don't press up on it, but we could swing around like this. We could bring that up, bring it down, and we can make it even. And you'll notice that the gun is on there too. So we're doing everything very quickly and easily, and it's fine. Now we have the original High Metal toy with its fighter mode adapter, which is not clear. It's black. I don't like that as much. If I've got the gun on the toy, and we'll talk about that attachment piece at length in a little bit, no worky. No worky, not even close, right? So in order for this to be on the display stand, I've got to remove my gun and then I can peg into this hole in the front, and then it kind of clips in at the legs, and then we have that hexagonal key. So as I put this on here, you can see it's a little funky. You can get that on there, and that's fine. And I could take that gun and I could put it in that little part behind the display stand here. And then as you see, as I bumped it, it banked, which again, pretty easy to get banking poses. So that's all very cool, but not, there's that need of a friction joint there. So I actually prefer the Tamashii Stage Act display stand, even though the original high metal display stand has a little more going on visually. Yeah, but maybe you're going to show your toy in Gerwalk mode, so you don't care that the adapter conflicts with a gun, but here's how the adapter for Gerwalk mode connects to the original high metal toy. It is these little nubs on the very back of the toy, and that means all of the weight of the toy is in front of the connection. So it's very delicate. It wants to fall forward all the time. And in Gerwalk mode, it's connecting to a chest piece that isn't even tabbed into the toy. So this is really just, it's not good. This is a terrible way to try to display your toy. I guess I'd have to tighten up all my screws on this to make it work. And again, even then the chest might separate. In comparison, the High Metal R has a nice clear adapter tucked right into the middle underneath the toy. It allows you to do whatever you want, very solid, very high marks there. For Battroid mode, the High Metal R once again gives us a clear display stand adapter. This one just plugs in to the bottom of the Battroid right here behind the crotch piece. And then we just peg it right into that Tamashii display stand. There we go. And it will do just fine holding the toy up for all sorts of fun action poses that we can quickly adjust however we like. Everything working out okay with minimal visual footprint. Things are very similar for the original High Metal toy. It has a black display stand adapter, which again, I don't like as much, but it just tabs in underneath. Very similar. It's got that hexagon key. So when we put it on the display stand, we have to choose our angle correctly. Now, one of the good things about Battroid mode on this display stand is that we do have counters to the balance. So if I lean this thing to one side, which is easier to do again on this display stand than it was on the Tamashii Stage Act, since there's weight off to the other side, we don't have that same falling over problem that we had on fighter mode. So all in all, both toys doing a very good job with the Battroid mode display stand adapters. The best way to force someone to listen to your song is with shoulder speakers. And I've cheated a little bit. On the High Metal R, we just pry up these covers to remove that piece, and then we replace it with the accessory cover. You'll notice the accessory cover doesn't have the little purple diamond on it that usually is there, and the tab position inside is a little different. And so now we can put this on, and it will not go all the way down like the original one did. So you get this speaker effect like so. The original High Metal with the accessory kit also has a speaker pod, but the implementation left a lot to be desired. First thing we gotta do is just rip the whole shoulder mechanism off, which is a little unnerving, and there's just two tiny little prongs that attach that on there. And you got to imagine if you did this a lot, eventually you would damage those and you'd have a shoulder falling off all the time. The next step is we rip the arm off at the ball joint below that connection piece. So again, very awkward process. Once we get here, there's that ball joint, and we install the arm right on there, and then it falls off and is frustrating to handle. But we can stick with it, folks. Let's get this on there. And then once we've done that, we now have something we can use as leverage as we install the shoulder on there. And you gotta line it up. There's just a slot right there, and we'll get it into place. And there you go. Now you have those big old speaker pods. And then the final effect, you know, the high metal R, there was some nice painted speakers on the inside. They are just flat black on the original high metal. So clearly one of these better than the other. Both toys include optional neck cover pieces for Gerwalk and fighter mode. The original high metal toy that you see here, here's the gap that would be there. It's not very good looking, so you're probably going to be more inclined to use this piece right here. Has a little peg in the front, and we can just push down on it uniformly, and it has pegs in the side, and it should, if I got it all lined up, go into place just like that. And you heard, kind of solid, it's going to stay there. And that is the much better approach to Gerwalk and fighter mode, is to have that installed. On the high metal R, it doesn't look so bad without it. That neck kind of covers the whole gap. And so, you know, it's still better with it. And similar approach, peg in the front, and it just kind of tabs into place. Works out better if you bring the head back, which I would have to pivot these, bring the head back a little, then install the part, then bring that back, bring these back down, push these forward, and there you go. Now that's the neck cover installed. Looks much better, clearly, but unlike the original high metal, you can get away with it without it, but I would encourage it. It's such an easy piece for everyone to use them. Both toys come with landing gear, but boy, do they do it in different styles. This is the high metal R. You can see everything looks good. There are no spinning tires, wheels. It's just one solid hunk of plastic. To remove the landing gear right now, I just pull out. We have nice hinged doors that close and conceal where that landing gear was. Up in the front, we have a 3-bay door. Same idea though, just a plug-in landing gear. And as you can see, it was sitting with that gun on, no problem. Very effective use of that accessory. Then we have our original high metal toy, which needs to be sitting on this display stand when the landing gear are in position. There is a little slot in the front of the original high metal. There is a peg on the front landing gear, but there are no other connection points. So if you knock this thing, it's pretty ugly pretty quickly. The other thing that you can see here is that we have big old tabs that come off of these landing gear that have to be received by this display stand in order for it to work. And I think we can all say that what we have on the high metal R seems a whole lot better thought out than what we get on this original high metal toy. Do check out my separate transformation guides. Obviously this is a little motley. We are on the way to Gerwalk mode, and what I wanted to show you is that on the high metal R, this part here is attached to the head and it just pivots up and out as we go to Gerwalk mode to be an erect fin. On the original high metal toy, this is one of the head parts it comes with. It is totally separate. It's completely removed in fighter mode. And then as we go to Gerwalk mode, we can just fish this in here and install it like so. And then it'll remain on the toy as we go all the way to Battroid. When it comes to extra head parts, the high metal R only comes with 2. This is what it looks like with the fighter Gerwalk mode head lasers on in Battroid. It's not terrible, so if you're a stickler, you don't even have to use these parts. But if you are, you can remove those head lasers and install the optional ones that are included for Battroid mode. All they do is angle out just a little bit, and there you go. In contrast, this is what the original high metal toy looked like when you got it to Battroid mode. And remember, we put this head laser on when we went to Gerwalk mode. Now we're gonna go ahead and put the other head lasers on, really to complete the head as we get to Battroid mode. So these parts, absolutely necessary. but they are nicely flared out like we saw with the High Metal R. And sometimes the best accessory is the one you don't get. This is the High Metal R. That is the gun we have already discussed, attached in the fighter mode position by simply slotting between the arms. It's solid, it's on there. Does it angle downward a little bit? Maybe, but not terribly so. So high marks for how the High Metal R handles the gun in fighter mode. This is the original High Metal toy. No slot for a gun. So we get this little accessory piece. Now this accessory piece would work with the VF-19S that was also sold as part of this line. It would work with the GU-15 gun pod just as well as this speaker pod launcher. That just slides into position, and then we line things up with this little section in the back because there are little nubs on the side of this that go into little slots in here. We press in, and there you go. Now this is on, you can see, relatively straight, I suppose, but the need for that extra part, and then how we saw the gun being on there interacting with the display stand adapter, it all just feels like an afterthought, and it's not very satisfying. When it comes to Battroid improvement parts, the High Metal R has only the one, if we're not including those head lasers, and that is a replacement shield. So here is the shield that was on in fighter mode, and if I remove this, you will see that the Battroid shield is more tapered both up above and below, and it fits on with a peg that is more central to the arm. So as we place this on now, it shifts the shield over a little bit and looks good doing it. One big change that Bandai made as it went from the original High Metal to the High Metal R toy is realizing that people don't really care that much about the back of the leg. And so on the High Metal R toy, we don't get any back of the leg cavity fillers. So if you thought this notch was too pronounced, or this notch down here, or the back here, well, too bad. Doesn't really matter on the High Metal R. On the original High Metal, we got cavity fillers, and it starts down below. You can see I've got cavity fillers already installed on this side, not on this side. They just plug in like so, and that just fell right out, didn't it? All right, so let's do that again. Get in your home. I blame that wing coming down. There you go. You hear it click into place. And then we have just a peg going into the hole on the back of the leg there. And that is now in place. And then we just have, again, more pegs going into more holes up on the top. And these would be parts, honestly, that I would probably never use. But when they're in there, that is a mighty fine back of the leg. So when it comes to packaging and accessories, there is no doubt the High Metal R is the superior option. Even if you wanted to say that the original High Metal display stand was a little bit better, which is not something I am totally sure I would agree with, there's no question the High Metal R, in terms of both execution and quantity, is the better package. And which toy does fighter mode better? Well, the High Metal R is the easy winner there. I guess before we start, let's talk about scale, because the original High Metal is a little bit bigger in fighter mode than the High Metal R, and this was badged as 1/100, but it's about 21 centimeters long, which is more like 1/88 scale, whereas the High Metal R just less than 20 centimeters, 190 something scale. So a little closer to 1/100 than the original High Metal toy was able to accomplish. What about line art accuracy? Well, as you can see, the High Metal R toy does a better job. The gullet area a little bit cleaner, just all throughout the intake area, moving back, everything looks just a little bit better and tighter together than it does on that High Metal toy. It's less thick throughout. making a much more attractive fighter mode. So what about handling? Which one handles better? And that is another easy victory for the High Metal R. The High Metal R almost feels like it's one piece of plastic in fighter mode. It's not even transformable. It's just rock solid. Rock solid to the point where if I try to pop this shoulder free right now, I am much more likely to remove the cover and would really need to get like a pry tool underneath the back here to get the whole thing popped up instead of just having that cover pop off. It is incredibly tight and solid. Now, the High Metal toy, the original High Metal toy, you could see the yellow from the chest poking through there. You got a few different levels as we go to the back of things not quite locked into position, and it's not nearly as solid. It was decent for the era, but it's not competing with the High Metal R from that just overall tactile sensation of handling it and swooshing it around. This is a little soft and wiggly. This is rock solid. When it comes to handling in Gerwalk mode, the High Metal R is a vast improvement over the original High Metal. And a lot of that has to do with articulation and some of it has to do with the design. So from an articulation standpoint, you can see I've got some very mean sweep going on those ankles and that knee with the reverse angle. Everything is fantastic. If we wanted to get that nose down, we can just pivot things forward a little bit. The ankle has the ability to go back and forth, a huge range of motion, and forward and back. And of course, we could also twist all the way around. So huge range of motion there. That's a pretty steep toe down pose. And then that knee with its extension joint gives you a very far range forward. And at the hip, we even have a pretty good balance of coming down at this position to engage that really aggressive stance. So very positive things there. And then as we come upward, we have this double jointed elbow on the High Metal R, which is made of metal, and it allows the toy to bring that arm all the way up like so. So very good things there. And it's holding together very solid. Hopefully you've been able to see that as well. And that is because these wings are tabbing into that slightly elevated chest, locking everything together. The only nit would be that the wings aren't locked into position at all. Very easy to knock those askew, but not that big a deal. And while we're looking at it from the top down, you can see the head lasers on either side are present in this mode, whereas on that original High Metal toy, we had that head fin you saw installed earlier. Those side lasers aren't even present here either. I don't know if that's going to matter much to anybody, but as I hold now the original High Metal toy, this not nearly as much articulation at the ankle is always going to limit you. It does have a pretty nice forward sweep, and on this, the Gerwalk joint right here actually allows you to come down a full 90 degrees. So it's really getting a lot of its slope from here rather than the knee, which I would say doesn't work nearly as well. Then you can see here, this is not locked into position. There is no tab that goes into the chest. So as I go to move the arms or something, definitely a lot more squirrely, both in what the wings do and the upper body. And then when we have the elbow here, just a straight 90 degrees of articulation at the elbow. So you could see not nearly as fun to handle. It does the mode decently enough to put it on your shelf, and you can pose it to look fairly aggressive, but it's not the same joy that you could get really playing with the High Metal R. Before we get to scale, we need to discuss line art. As you look at the waist of the original toy, you'll see the additional spacing making that toy look taller. You'll also see the canards are poking out, and the leading edge of the wing is part of the hip instead of nested behind it. In contrast, the High Metal R is much more line art accurate because it condenses everything tighter, which lets the toy look stocky. The legs are also thicker, so the HMR is much better looking, but it comes at the cost of size. The more condensed high metal R stands nearly a centimeter shorter, making it more like 1/105 scale to the original toy's 1/100 scale. So leave me a comment and let me know, what is your preference for the VF19? Would you rather the toy be about the right size when grouped with other high metal R Battroids, or do you prefer that it captures the look of the line art as closely as possible? The original high metal VF19 Kai does not have missile bays in the legs. Bandai later, for the Blazer Valk, came up with some swap out parts, but the Fire Valk never got those. So it's not an option on the original, and here it is integrated into the legs of the high metal R. Now it is a little difficult to spin these missiles around the first time. These need to go in like so, and they're on pegs, so then you push them down. And the shape of the leg as you rotate it helps lift these on the pegs so that they can face the right direction. But we're gonna go ahead and push this one in, and then this one's gonna rotate back the other way. And you're gonna have to get these just right, or else when you go to close the leg, it won't happen. But next time you see this Fire Valkyrie, I'll have them all put away properly. So that's how the missiles need to be stowed if you want this to conceal properly. One of the aspects of high metal toys, either high metal R or original high metal, that often gets people in a little bit of a tizzy is the lack of metal. Now with the high metal R, we can see metal here. There's metal in the joints in the knee. And as we turn the toy around, there is a big metal hinge on the back. It looks like this piece might be metal, really hard to judge on that. But the important takeaway here, does not feel very hefty. Do not buy these toys thinking you're gonna get something mostly made out of metal. You're gonna get a few metal hinges. And that was also true on the original high metal toy, where you are very hard pressed to identify any metal outside of that hinge and potentially that back spine. Now we do have also on the high metal R, the ball around the foot. But again, nothing worth writing home about. Metal's in the name, don't be deceived. That's just a play on your sentimentality for the old school toys. The head articulation on both of these toys is probably so-so. They can spin around, they can look up and down. The original high metal might be a little bit of a ball joint that lets you cock, but not so much on the high metal R. The high metal R though does give us a range of motion on the knee that is very impressive. Where the original high metal, you're lucky to get about 90 degrees. On the high metal R, we can get much more than 90 degrees, and we can extend that knee to get an even further range of motion. The canards on the high metal R rotate out of the way, and then we have this leading edge of the wing piece behind the hip, but that allows us to move that hip back without running into anything until we get more than straight back. And we could do the same thing pulling this leg forward. Since the joint is ahead of that, it's gonna move just fine. And we have the ability to rotate down if we wanted to, and maybe get a little bit further rotation point. So good hip articulation there. On the original toy, those canards are actually in the way. So here we have these canards right here. They will run into the leg as it comes back, or as it goes forward. The point is so far it's gonna hit, and as a result, you can't get quite as far forward or quite as far back. This is the high metal R, and I've got the ankles flared to show you how wide of a stance this toy can get. So that's nice and wide, and if we bring this down, we can actually go ahead and keep going further. So very nice, aggressive ability to pivot those hips outward at the waist. And then as we do that, because we have these really nice ankles, we can bring those inward and actually have it be stable and look natural. Things not so great on the original high metal toy. And just as we're here, I just want to show you how shiny this is in comparison to the matte colors that we've been seeing throughout this video of the high metal R. So definitely a shinier interpretation on the original toy. But here, as we bring these hips out, now they also have pivot points here, but as you can see, they don't go nearly as far. And the ankles, even though we're not going as far, aren't quite able to keep up with the sway that we get, since they are so limited in comparison to what we get with the high metal R. When it comes to durability, the original high metal toys are certainly showing their age. We have the loose joints in a couple different places. That wing pivot there is pretty atrocious. I also have kneecaps that have been falling off on these toys. So this kneecap here, very easy to remove, which is very frustrating during handling. My Blazer Valk even more so. It almost will not stay on that Valk anymore. So those are your bummers to watch out for. Otherwise, honestly, a pretty solid toy, but that will definitely get on your nerves. This garish Valk is not for everybody, but if you are a fan of Macross 7, then the high metal R is definitely the way to go. It beats the original release so handily that it is even worth the upgrade. Now, this has been a very long video, so hopefully I didn't miss anything, but do not be shy. If you think I did, leave a comment. And yeah, I know, people, I got a huge backlog and I'm going to be working through that, so please subscribe. Thanks everybody for watching.